And reports have come out today that the U.S. is preparing for military action against Iran. The New York Times reporting that the U.S. could send as many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East should Iran attack American forces or accelerate work on nuclear weapons. Here's what U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had to say in Sochi today.
We fundamentally do not seek a war with Iran. We've also made clear to the Iranians that if American interests are attacked, we will most certainly respond in an appropriate fashion.
Venezuela and Ukraine were also points of contention during Pompeo's meeting with Lavrov. So why is the U.S. trying to reach out to Russia now when they have so many fundamental differences? Joining me from Victoria is Michael Bociurkiw. He is a global affairs analyst and the former spokesperson for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Michael, welcome to you.
Good to be with you, Carol.
Donald Trump apparently reaching out multiple times now to Russia to repair relations. Why? What's the benefit to the U.S.?
Well, Carol, I was watching closely the press conference today, and whenever words like frank and useful are used in diplomatic meetings to describe what happened, I know from my experience with the OSCE, that means very little happened. There were more disagreements today than agreements. Now, Trump, for whatever reason, is really intent on resetting relations with Russia, saying they're a good friend. And, you know, I think there are really two main reasons to cozy up, for Trump to cozy up to Russia. Number one is that if they even admit that, you know, they were involved in election meddling in the United States, then that diminishes Trump's victory. So he will do everything possible, including blocking that Mueller report from coming out. And then also, the second reason is that there has to be something called compromising material on Trump that would make him work really against national security experts' advice, against U.S. national security interests in the way he's acting towards Russia, allowing them a free hand in Ukraine, not really being hard on them on Venezuela, also in Syria, and then also in other flashpoints around the world. They're not getting the type of warnings, the type of pressure that one would normally expect.
Okay. One of the issues that purportedly they were going to discuss and reach some agreement on, because Donald Trump frankly thinks it's too expensive, is the idea of nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and they're working towards, I guess it's 2022 for when the other deal expires, but not much kind of bellicose talk from the Russian side on that one, I noticed. And however, if you talk to analysts and read a lot of the material that I do, the Russians tend to do things much more covertly. They're not to be trusted on a lot of agreements that they sign, or on their, even ballistic or nuclear stockpile weapons. So hence the White House, I think, has to be very careful on this. But having said that, Carol, I think it's amateur hour at the White House right now. A lot of seasoned experts are gone. And Trump seems to be acting in this issue and a lot of others in a very bellicose manner to look like I'm the tough guy. And if I push enough, if I threaten enough, I will get the deal done.
Yeah, let's talk about Iran, because right now there's a feeling that there is a drumbeat of war. Pompeo was asked about reports of the U.S. military sending as many, or planning to send as many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East if Iran should attack American forces or expand its nuclear weapons, which they are actually saying that they have intelligence that Iran is planning to do that. Then there are these mysterious attacks on Saudi oil assets this afternoon. I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, I know from my contacts there's a lot of nervousness in European capitals right now over what the United States may be planning. Now, it has to be said that there is pressure from Trump's inner circle, Jared Kushner and people like that, to take a very hard line on Iran. There's pressure from the Israeli side and also the Saudi Arabia side. That's number one. But, there's another factor here is John Bolton, a very close friend and, colleague of Donald Trump. And he's the one who really pushed for U.S. intervention in Iraq and now Iran. The nervousness you're seeing in Europe, and it was really echoed yesterday when Pompeo dropped into Brussels, is very legitimate. And that's because not only do you have a population in Iran several times more than Iraq, about 82 million, you have about 750,000 active and reserve military personnel there. Lots of ballistic weapons, not only in Iranian hands, but also in Hezbollah. And then you'll see, I'm sure, in the markets tomorrow when they open, a lot of nervousness there because the 1/3 of oil tanker traffic passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which borders Iran. And if that is blocked, you're not only going to see drops in oil exports, but also exports of other goods as well. So potentially huge damage not only to the world economy, but then there's also the humanitarian side too of innocent civilians getting killed. Yeah,
the other issue they disagree on, where some people think they could stumble into war also or conflict, is Venezuela.
Yeah, very interesting kind of body language there on Venezuela. I think that was really the toughest Pompeo got when he was with Lavrov in that press conference. The U.S. knows that it really has few cards to play. The Russians know that they're there to stay. They want Maduro to stay. So I don't think we're going to see much movement there. In fact, as the days and weeks pass, I think we're going to see, sadly, more status quo in Venezuela with Maduro staying there and also triggering that terrible, terrible humanitarian crisis that ordinary people are facing.
Okay, and finally, you just got back from Ukraine, the situation between the two countries and Canada's involvement in that one.
Well, my head is still spinning from that trip to Ukraine and seeing Volodymyr Zelensky elected. But you know, Carol, we've had about 3 weeks or so of him as president-elect. And the one thing I have to say is where he's earned a lot of credit so far, including from Western diplomats, is taking a strong stand against Vladimir Putin. Putin really provoked him shortly after he was elected by offering Russian passports not only to the citizens of the Donbass, but all Ukrainian citizens. So Zelensky retorted that, well, anyone from Russia or any other subjugated nation who needs relief or sanctuary, well, Ukraine will welcome them. We're probably going to see, Carol, his inauguration, and my guess would be in about 10 days from now, but there's still back and forth with the recalcitrant, I would call them, Ukrainian parliament to get that date set. And then, of course, once he is in power, getting any economic reforms through is going to be quite a bit difficult task as well because of all the competing factions in that Ukrainian parliament.
All right, and not to mention on the world stage. Michael Bociurkiw, Global Affairs Analyst and the former spokesperson for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Michael, thank you.
My pleasure.